Shalom, giving honor and praise unto Yah, the creator and the maker of heaven and earth. This is Yisrael of the tribe of Dan of the nation of Israel. The purpose in this presentation this evening, brothers and sisters, is due to the fact that you have some people who want to sit there and state that the children of Israel, the house of Jacob, plagiarized their culture from the ancient Egyptians. Before we get into the core of the presentation, it is interesting to note that many of the times in which people state that, they do not show where the Sabbath is inside of the Egyptian culture. They do not show where idolatry is frowned upon in the Egyptian culture. They do not show where homosexuality is punishable by death inside the Egyptian culture. They do not show, brothers and sisters, the penalty for stealing inside of the Egyptian culture. These things are very important because, as the prophet Moses said in the book of Deuteronomy, it says, there is no nation on the earth that has laws and statutes and his judgments as we have. That's in Deuteronomy chapter 4 and chapter 5. So the fact that the laws of each people are different shows you that the culture itself is different. There is no ancient culture that has what we will understand as the term a zero tolerance policy once it comes down to idolatry. You find certain jobs and companies saying we have a zero tolerance policy for X, Y, and Z. Well, in Torah, there is a zero tolerance policy for idolatry. You understand? So, one of the next things to sit there and point out is that you can't sit there and state that somebody plagiarized something without evidence that the people was there to be able to plagiarize. The fact that history shows that ancient Egyptians were very secluded from other peoples. The fact that they kept to themselves and they traded in certain things such as animals, gold, merchandise. But what was never traded on the Egyptians is what they will call and understand as knowledge and understanding of certain things. This is why ancient Egypt was kind of what you will call behind in other people of the Asiatic or other African nations in certain ways, because the Egyptians kept to themselves in many ways. The people who said that Egypt is the light of the world were the same people who were enslaving our people over here in the Western Hemisphere. You understand? When that guy, Volney, who have you, went over into Egypt and said, oh wow, we owe this, our speech and culture and everything over to the same people that we are enslaving. So that just goes to show you exactly what was done. In the other presentation, it was made to be noted that the children of Israel were the people that were sent over here in captivity. You can go on my YouTube channel and look up Hebrew discusses Black History Part 1, 2, 3, and 4, in which I explained into that aspect. This presentation, however, is simply to show the fact that our people, the children of Israel, did not plagiarize from the Egyptians. The children of Israel would have never had been able to gain access into Egyptian records to be able to plagiarize. You understand? And the fact, as stated in other presentations, that you find it to where other nations that are independent of Israel and Egypt speak about Israel in their own particular records. Shalmaneser III, Mesha of King Moab, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, so forth and so on. So, let us look up the definition of the word culture. It says, the skills, arts, etc. of a given people in a given period. Some people also define culture as meaning the arts, the crafts, the mathematics, the science, and so forth and so on. Now, if you look at, for instance, the science of the Egyptians, and I'm going to just pick one of the several, the understanding of what they call embalming and mummification, that was not done by other peoples of the earth. You understand? In that light. So, we have to then ask, brothers and sisters, if there's no evidence of other people doing what we will call and understand as embalming and mummification, then what culture of the Egyptians was spread to the other peoples? Many brothers and sisters who don't even lay claim to being Egyptian people, but who are, however, black people, like to sit there and state, well, I'm not Egyptian, but I like to sit there and claim the science and the culture of the Egyptians because they had a higher civilization. We have to ask a couple of things. Was Egypt open in their history to other people claiming to be Egyptian who were not Egyptian? That's very important to let it be noted and understood. And the situation, as discussed before, in another presentation about the Egyptians and the Hyksos, shows it that no, ancient Egypt was not open to other people claiming to be Egyptians who were not Egyptians. The next thing to sit there and point out, brothers and sisters, is that you cannot sit there and say that because these people had what you will call a higher civilization, that you're going to sit there and claim that. Because what that shows is irresponsibility. What that shows is the fact of and the idea of saying somebody did something for me, so I don't have to do anything. I don't need to build anything because all I got to do is look at the Temple of Hatshepsut. All I got to do is sit there and look at the Valley of the Kings and the Valley of the Queens and the Temple of Medinet Habu and the Walls of Karnak. I don't have to sit there and build anything for my people now because I could just claim a civilization of the past. I don't even have to be the lineal descendants of the Egyptians, but I can sit there and claim it. Brothers and sisters, at that point, what you have done is pimped, Pimped, the culture of the Egyptians. And that right there would have been taboo to the ancient Egyptians. You understand? Now, another thing to get into and explain, brothers and sisters, is the definition of the word plagiarize. It means to take ideas, writings, etc. from another and passing them off as one's own without giving credit to the actual owner. That would be like saying, get a letter from Robert, and I, Dwayne, sit there and copy the letter, and I never give credit to the fact that I got it from Robert, and then I, Dwayne, pass the letter off as mine. Now, when you charge someone with plagiarism, you have to sit there and explain how did Dwayne get Robert's letter? How did Dwayne have access to Robert's letter? Was Robert's letter sealed? Was Robert's letter meant to not be quote unquote plagiarized? Did Robert have it on to the point where it was on lockdown to where Dwayne could not sit there and copy it? All of those things have to be taken into consideration when you're charging somebody with plagiarism. You understand? So, one of the things to be pointed out emphatically is that the time in which the Egyptians' culture was infiltrated was during the time of the Greeks. This being long after the time of the children of Israel, being in the land of Egypt. You understand? So, now by the time the dynasties are winded up, falling down and everything, and you get to, let's say, Dynasty 27, then Dynasty 28, and so forth and so on, you have it to where the guy Herodotus was up in Egypt, and he was speaking at first from his knowledge that the Egyptians was telling him from Dynasty 26. You understand? And moving on from there. So then you had it to where the Egyptian culture was being seen over in Greece, and then later on the Romans copied off from the Greeks certain things and so forth and so on. But this is no direct attempt or shot at Kemet or Egypt. But we have to ask this to the brothers and sisters who say, well, yeah, the Egyptians civilized the Greeks and the Romans. You have to ask then, what civilization did they bring to the Greeks and the Romans? Because the Greeks and the Romans were some of the most barbaric, uncivilized, and what we would call uncooped people upon the earth. The Romans would sit there and have a man between two horses and have the horses rip him apart. The Greeks would sit there and have it to where they kept women isolated in what they call an island of Lesbos, because they sat there and felt that men should be with men because they felt that was a higher science. You see? So we have to then ask for those who are sitting up there saying, okay, boom, the Greeks and the Romans were taught civilization and were civilized by what Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, and others was taught by the Egyptians. And even though, yes, they were taught by the Egyptians, when they went back to Greece, they was actually shunned in Greece. So when then, under that premise and understanding, when did the Egyptian civilization then get into other places? Because when they brought the mathematics that the Egyptians did teach them, they wound up, brothers and sisters, being ostracized by the Greek people when they went back. So it still leads people to sit there and wonder and understand what civilization did the Egyptians bring to people. You cannot sit there and state that somebody building a building is civilization, because there are many people who build buildings. You understand? You had what they refer to as the ziggurats over in Sumeria. You have pyramids in Indonesia. There are pyramids in Ethiopia. There are pyramids in Mexico. You understand? But it seems as if, and this is not a knock on Egypt, but it seems as if, brothers and sisters, that they want to sit there and keep trying to bash and trying to disrespect, as we may say, the Israelites. And we have to sit back sometimes and wonder why that is the case. Because the understanding of us being Israel was a turn off to many people. And to be candid, here's two reasons. It was a threat to the European white Jews, because they then had to sit there and explain who was this Negro saying that they from the tribe of Judah. One. Secondly, it let it be noted and understood that the European man was basically the wicked sinners and the evil people of the Bible and the enemies of the house of Israel that Deuteronomy 28 speaks of. And so, with reference with the black people, the children of Israel at that time was sitting up there saying that we need to return back to the laws, the statutes, and the commandments. We have to sit there and keep the Sabbath day holy. We have to sit there and respect our parents. We have to sit there and not deal with our woman when she's on her menstrual. We cannot sit there and go and try to covet another man's wife and try to, talk to a woman when she has a man and everything like that. Well, if he don't treat you right, I will. These are things that are considered taboo to the ways of the children of Israel, but are praised among the people who just want to claim anything that's just black. So when you're dealing with saying that you're an Israelite, there are some people who feel, well, the ways of the Hebrew Israelites are not flexible enough for us in this society. And for those who feel like that, you're going to go down in this wicked society as well. You understand? You can't sit there and try to embrace it and hold on to it and then expect to be delivered out of it. You understand? So let us continue on. Knowing and understanding that the definition of the word plagiarize is to take the ideas, the writings from another and passing those things off as one's own without giving credit to the proper authority. We have to sit back and then show a parallel. For instance, as stated in other times, where is the Sabbath? Where is Passover? Where is even Hanukkah or Purim inside of Egyptian culture? Can you show a Feast of Booths inside of the Egyptian culture? If you can show the 10th day of the 7th month as the Day of Atonement inside of Egyptian culture. If you can sit there and even show geographically how the cultures were the same, then you might have a leg to stand on. But until you can be able to explain why the Nile River overflow and the Jordan River does not, you have no leg to stand on. If you cannot sit there and show with evidence the fact that there's rain that come down at different seasons in the land of Canaan, which later became the land of Israel, but you cannot find that same type of season in the land of Egypt. So the climate is different. The geography is different. The calendar is different. Ancient Egypt had a 10-day week. The ancient Hebrews had a 7-day week. So the counting on each of their own individual calendars was different. You see, there are more differences when you get right down to knowing what a society is, as opposed to just saying, oh, somebody built the building and used a brick or stone. That's not, brothers and sisters, plagiarizing. You understand? So the little pathetic and asinine ways that a lot of people try to use to sit there and state, okay, this was copied out of this, is emphatically incorrect. The understanding of some who say, okay, the understanding of stealing was borrowed in quote unquote. Before I knew how to read any language, and I was stealing at the age of, let's say, about 4 or 5, trying to sit there and get $2 where I seen on someone's dresser, and I got in trouble by my mom, may she rest in peace concerning that. I knew at that time what I was doing was wrong, and there was no concept of plagiarism in my head. You understand? It's called a conscience. That is something that you come with innately. That's not something that you get out of reading any papyrus or scriptures.